Hi everyone, it's Kelly from the Hub, here today with our friend Pastor Jim from Bergstrasse. Hello there, Pastor Jim. How are you?
Good morning there, Kelly. I'm doing okay.
Okay,
I don't know where you are, but where I'm at, it's a bit of a dreary Tuesday, though.
okay, it's a bit of a dreary Tuesday here too, but you also changed your geography. You don't have to reveal where that is, but you know that that freaks everybody out. Well, and by everybody, it's me.
And I can't even say that it's one of those fancy pictures that I can put up afterwards, but it's not. It's just at a different house. But
right, you're just somewhere new. So we were talking a lot before this. We had like 7 different topics that we were going to talk about, and we came, like always, I know every single time we say the same thing, which is
this
fine.
is our regular routine, you know. I think if people understood that we just showed up and just started talking, they would like, really?
Or they'd be like, what is wrong? So we got to an interesting place, and I think what we're going to talk about today is, what does it mean to be a pastor? So, okay, so I just wanted to just like have a little start. So I've been friends with Pastor Jim for like whatever, since he's been to town for like a year. And you know, we do work at the Hub. He's one of our partners. We do stuff. I've been over to church. We've done, you know, we do stuff. We do this every week, all that. So I was raised in the Lutheran Church as well, which, you know, that's how the world happened to show up in my life. You know, I was a kid. I didn't have a choice. That was how it worked in my family. And the parsonage for our pastor was a street over. That's not where the church was, but that's where the parsonage was. Fine. Oh, for those of you who don't know what a parsonage is, that's the house that some churches purchase for the minister to live in. Some churches do that, some churches don't. So our pastor at church always wore his black shirt and black pants with the collar all the time. He would wear a robe on top if it was, you know, when it was robe season with all the colors, because that was fun. And I always liked the linen one in the summer, but I still thought it was hot, but that's a whole other conversation. And I remember being a kid and riding my bike, and I happened to be on the next street over where the parsonage was. And my pastor was on a riding lawnmower with a strappy t-shirt, shorts, sneakers, and knee socks. And I almost fell off my bike because the picture that I saw before me had nothing to do with the man that I had youth group with and was at church every week, and like the fun guy who rolled your knuckles at the end of church when he shook your hand, all that stuff that I remember from my pastor. I was like, wait, he mows the lawn and he doesn't wear those clothes 24/7. When you're a kid, you think that. And I don't think that was just a kid thing. I think there were a lot of adults who, if they would have driven past, would have been like, whoa, pastor. So I didn't know how to handle that because I didn't know how to handle that. So that was sort of the conversation starter that I had with Pastor Jim, because I was like, I don't know. Pastors are in a mold. There is a mold that's called pastor, and that you all fit into it, and then that's it.
I know. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? Because quite frankly, I had a very similar experience too. And we as people forget that pastors are human also. We mow grass, we shovel snow, we go to the grocery store, we got to go to doctors and dentists, we need to get our cars fixed.
But like, do you wear your collar? Okay, so one time we were doing an interview and he came to the interview before we started and he didn't have his collar on, and I was like, do you want to put your collar on before we start? Because I'm not sure people will know it's you. Like, it's like Superman, right? Like, everyone's like, well, that's just Clark Kent. And then he takes his glasses off and everyone's like, oh, Superman. It's the same, I think, with pastors. You put that collar on and everyone's like, oh, it's a pastor. Like, we don't know you any other way. So do you have other clothes? And I know that sounds ridiculous, but.
So the answer is yes, I have lots of other clothes. As a matter of fact, I probably have too many other clothes.
Let's get into like the whole issue.
But in some ways, it's nice to have a uniform, that I know what I'm going to get.
Yep.
And please, I don't need any more of these. I have plenty of these.
No pastor collar gifts. It's
no
weird.
pastor collar gifts.
Yeah.
And to be honest, to be truthfully and honest, this get up, this shirt with this tab in it, by the way, it can come out, does not make me a pastor, but it does identify my role in the community or wherever I am. So in a previous setting where I was a pastor, it was actually the kind of like the practice in that area where pastors did not wear this. So I would just be in street clothes. And sometimes that was difficult for other people because there are still people, even of younger generations, that, this is a sign.
Yep.
This is a sign. This is a person that I can respect. In fact, sometimes it works and sometimes it really doesn't work. One of the first times when I first wore a collar, this is considered a clerical collar. One of the first times I wore that in public, I was in Philadelphia and I needed to visit one of the hospitals in Center City. And where I was located, it was easier to take the train in than it was to drive in.
Yeah.
I will never forget getting off of the train at one of the 3 major stops in Center City, and people just coming up to me and say, "Good morning, Father. Good morning, Father." And they literally opened doors for me and everything else. It's a show of respect.
Absolutely.
And it was really hard for me to experience.
You're like, I'm not Catholic. Right? Like,
oh, not only that, it's just sort of like still Jim.
Right, like you weren't even Jim at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And people have different expectations of their pastors and what they do. So I think with pastors, it's until congregants or people of faith see their pastor in daily life doing whatever he or she is doing, it's hard to comprehend that they are somebody different. I mean, because we only see them in the church or in worship or doing youth group or whatever. And yeah, I can tell you that I don't wear this a lot of times at church meetings and stuff like that. No, I will do it for worship. I will wear this for hospital visits, especially the first time to a hospital, because sometimes it's hard for people to say, "You're a pastor? Prove it." Right.
Do you have like an ID card? I mean, I do.
Well, the truth is I do.
I was going to say, I sort of thought pastors had like an ID that says, I'm a pastor, but I don't know I've never seen one before, but.
We do have an ID card that gets us in special places, but it doesn't work all the time. I have to tell you that.
So do you get like backstage passes? You go to a concert and you're like, well, I'm a pastor. And then they're just okay.
No, usually for that, they say, I'm sorry, you're not welcome here because you are a pastor. What you're going to experience here is not pastorally safe or whatever. And I think that's one of the challenges for pastors, as well as people, to understand that we are people. Pastors are people. And what makes me different than anybody else? Just my uniqueness of who I am as a person of God.
Yeah, and I don't want to oversimplify and say, because it's not, I don't believe this, that like it's just your job. Like I think that there are things that you do that are more than just you know,
Yeah.
you are more than your vocation, but also your vocation is more than a job. I think that's what
My personality and my personhood comes out more in my calling as a pastor than probably most people do experience in their jobs. So the
yeah.
difference between a call and a job, for me, a job is show up, do A, B, C, D, and go home. For me, the calling of a pastor is more than just a specified hour in a day. It's like, I don't want to make it sound worse, bad or whatever, but it really is 24/7. It really is who I am. It's the depths of who I am as a person. So for me, being a pastor is more than just kind of like getting A, B, C done, ticking things off of the list. There are some things like that, but it's not everything. Um, and and I have to tell you that I was laughing inside when you were sharing your story with how with your first, you met your pastor across the street, and there he was mowing grass and all that kind of stuff. I too have had people comment to me that you're a pastor,
What's that
and
like?
it's really not so much. It's not so much about looks or anything like that, but um, it's how I present myself with people. And again, that's part of my calling. That's part of my gift of who I am. I recently had dinner with some people that I had just met a few weeks before.
Yeah.
And they invited me over their house. And first of all, it was kind of like, okay, they're inviting the pastor over the house. What's this going to be like,
Right, because what do you talk about?
What do you talk about? Yeah.
Right. Like that's a lot of Bible talk for like a whole night. Not that you couldn't handle it, but
I'm more than just that.
right.
So it was very, very interesting and fascinating because when I arrived, it was like, I was just asked if there was something I would like to drink. And I said, well, what are you offering? And they said, well, we have water and we have iced tea. And my next comment was, and for those that know me will know that this is very typical, do you have any vodka?
Right. Right. You could have a cocktail. Right.
And this couple was like,
like you weren't allowed. Yeah.
and I think, and one of the comments that was made later on in the evening was, you're actually a human being.
Right. Isn't that weird? Right, we all have, well, I don't know, I mean, the list might be different, but we all have a list in our head of what is whatever, minister, priest, rabbi,
yeah.
whatever it is. We have a list. And if you haven't already checked those boxes off, we're like, wait, you mean minister, priest, rabbi, well, shaman could be something else?
Yeah.
And then your whole world is blown.
Well, I mean, I had a whole life even before this. I mean, I worked in food service. I worked in restaurants for nearly 30 years. And it's like, it's who we are. And I must say that at least in my experience, having been on the other side, and the other side being a non-pastor presence, helps me, I think, to be a more effective pastor, because I can see more of the realities of life. And I think that's one of the greatest gifts that a pastor can bring to his or her people that he's ministering with, is that they can show that they are people.
Yeah.
And we are messed up.
This is not to say that whatever religion you are, that may be different, that may have different rules about that. That's, that it's not about bad or good. This is just, this is the experience. And I think what's fascinating about it is when you come across someone who is very different from what that norm is, whether in your religion or in another religion, that you were like, oh, I didn't know a rabbi could be a woman. Because I think that might be a huge thing. So my cousin actually married a rabbi. My cousin is a man and he married a female rabbi. And my whole family had to take a moment, pause,
Agreed.
breathe, and learn about that. We don't have, I mean, like, there aren't other Jewish people in our family, really. I mean, there are, but differently,
Sure.
not like that. And so, but having your cousin marry a rabbi, I was like, are we allowed to talk to him? Like, you know, there were family members who had a lot of those kinds of questions because we didn't, what is a female rabbi? What does that mean? And she wears high heels, and what does that mean? And like, we all had all these conversations because she was not the expectation.
So before I introduce you to, one of those, a person kind of
Yeah.
similar to you, I have to just share this very quick story. So our viewers may or may not know, but I have 2 adult sons.
Yep.
And when I started seminary about 15 years ago, one of my sons came up to me and says, "Dad, does this mean I need to start going to church?" And I said, "No, I just want you to be you.
Yeah.
I want you to be you. And God loves you the way you are."
Yeah.
Phew.
Isn't that funny? Because he thought he had expectations too. Yeah.
He had expectations, and it was like, it's no. So when you talk about those expectations of what we think a pastor is, I'm gonna say to to you, Kelly, and also to our viewers, you need to check. I want you to check out Nadia Bowles-Weber.
I can actually share my screen and show people what she looks like.
Okay.
So I think that that's like important because we're having this whole conversation about this, and I just pulled up her pic. So there's a lot of pics on the side, and they're all her. So her hair has changed over time because
yes,
it does. But you can see a larger pic, and I'll just share my screen and show you. So here we go. Okay, so this is a picture of Nadia Bowles-Weber. So you know her. So do you want to like chat about how you know her and like how that we talked about this? Yeah.
So actually, Nadia Bowles-Weber is one of the contemporary theologians that I follow periodically. If you'll notice there, one of her names there is Sarcastic Lutheran, because she also just sort of like tells it like it is.
Yeah.
But when you first look at her,
go to her page. So let me find it.
When you first experience Nadia in person, it's like, wow, the kind of like the hackles go up a little bit. How can she be a pastor? My gosh, she has all those tattoos, and I don't know if you have any pictures that are close enough, but she also has piercings. Oh my gosh.
So this is an article about her with her, I mean, like, so she also preaches, and you can see that she looks very different than what people would imagine. Yeah.
But you have to read her story to find out that she really is more than what we see on the outside. She really is a child of God. She truly is a person who understands the presence of the holy within each of us. And that's one of the reasons why I really try to follow her, is because she speaks truth to, honestly, the way that I think that Christians are encouraged to be, and followers of Jesus. And she's just really, really good at that. And her story is one of like, yeah, it really was a difficult life. She had some rough times in her life, as does everyone.
Right.
But yeah, and I think one of the things that she does, and does it very well, is makes it real, makes life real for people, and teaches in a way that God is real for people. And that's actually one of the things that I try to do in my ministry, is that try to help people to see God already in their lives, not wait for God to do something, not for God to show a big sign or whatever. And
right, lightning bolts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It really is in the simple stuff where we experience a connection with with the holy, with God, and whatever, and however you identify or however you name God within your life, or a God-like being, a holy being. It's not about things that happen to us. It's about how we experience life and how do we share it. So my life as a pastor is one that I hope that I use to help other people to experience that we all have a connection with God, and we all have a connection with each other. It's not about God and me. It's about us. It's about God and all of us together. And I think it's actually pretty cool that we are challenged in ways that take us out of our comfort zones. When we see pastors that wear shorts and a t-shirt mowing grass.
Yeah.
When we see pastors that are of a different gender.
Mm-hmm.
When we see pastors that, are of a different ethnicity.
Right, like we live where we live, so pretty much most of the pastors look like us.
Very much alike.
Right, and if you live in a different community, then most of those pastors look like those people as well. And so you're right, if you are in our community and a pastor looks very different, you have to be thoughtful about that. And you have to say, is it different in my pastor life if that was my friend? Or if this was my coworker, or if this was whatever, my next door neighbor or whatever. Like, why do you have different feelings about your neighbor than you do your pastor? And I know we could talk, that could be a whole segment.
Oh, that's another week.
Right, but it's weird, right? Because you're taught there's no judging.
So the
moment you see like your pastor who looks not the way you expect, you're like, whoop, nope.
And I want to also be clear about something, Kelly. So in my tradition as a Lutheran pastor, there are vows that I take.
Right.
That I take, very, very similar to wedding vows.
Yep.
I promise to do, I covenant to do, and those things set me aside a little bit,
mm-hmm.
but they don't take away my humanness, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
They don't set me up here as a perfect human being, because I am far from perfect. I am far from perfect. But there are some expectations of my role as a pastor, that I will speak to the presence of God in people's lives, that I will care for people in their times of grief, sorrow, happiness, joy. It's not just only those difficult times. It's the happy times too.
Right. You also marry people. Yeah.
I also marry people. I bury the dead.
Yep.
And this may sound weird, but I also heal the sick.
Right, because there are lots of ways to be sick and there are lots of ways to be healed.
There's lots of ways to experience healing, and
mm-hmm.
it is very life-giving and humbling for me when I sit with a person or a couple and they say, oh, I feel so much better. And that's a sense of healing, of just being able to be present with one another. And those, I'm kind of telling a little bit about who I am as a pastor. My presence, my ministry is all about presence, is about showing up.
Right, and I guess,
and I don't
would say that should be on every pastor's checklist. I would hope that everybody who, by pastor I mean spiritual leader, whatever.
Spiritual leader,
whatever, yeah. Every spiritual leader that you come across or want to come across in your life, you would want them to be to connect to you and to honor you where you're at. That seems like a pretty major point.
So it's a connection between you and me and God.
Yeah.
And that spiritual realm within us. And that spiritual realm is not a place that you go to, it's already here.
Right. We don't have to go to that building on the hill in order to have that moment. Right.
We're having this moment literally 60 miles apart.
Yep.
But it's a screen that's brought us together.
We have had this moment over coffee, sitting across the booth from each other.
Yeah. So pastors, and yes, I'm speaking just from my own experience. We're human.
And you have other clothes.
I have other clothes. To be honest, when we're finished here, this may come off or it may not.
I was going to say, you're not going to wear that the rest of your day. Right. Right. And I think, I'm hearing in my head all the people who are like, well, then why are you wearing it now? And then ha 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 ha, look at him, and all those conversations. And that's why we do this. That's one of those things that I want this to like spark things in your brain and go, oh.
Because if I showed up in street clothes,
yeah,
and you identify me as Pastor Jim, people are going to say,
right, because of their
pastor?
Right, because of the list in their head. Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why I wear this in certain places.
Yeah.
Including worship.
Right.
Including worship on Sunday mornings or Wednesday nights or whenever.
Yeah.
When I put on the public face of pastor,
that's part of it. That's part of it for you. Right.
Oh, and then by the way, if you would see me out and about in town and I'm not wearing this,
right. Right. You still get the gym and the pastor part. It just might be in a polo shirt. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm not a big t-shirt guy.
Yeah. This was more than what I had anticipated when we talked about this topic. So I'm glad that this is the avenue that we went down. I hope people are being thoughtful about all that, about the list they have for their person as well.
For their spiritual leader, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and other spiritual leaders that they come across. As always, my friend. Cheers to you, and we will see you next week. All right.
See you next week. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.